In 1992, I graduated college. I was 22 years old, and my father gave me a lump sum of money. I want to say $600, with the proviso that it go towards the purchase of my very first video camera. He knew this was something that I'd wanted for a while. And so I bought at Sears, that no longer exists, they've raised it to the ground, a Panasonic PV700. The camera was a switch hitter. The grip was dead center, and the eyepiece could flip around to the other side. So if you were filming and the battery and the VHS tape and everything got heavy, you could flip it around and film the other way. Can you imagine a day and time when we had to worry about the endurance issues of the battery of our shoulder-slung VHS video cameras? Some of you kids watching have no idea what several of the words I just said are. The rest of the money could go towards any other purchases that I wanted to make. So I bought toys. I had a few Star Wars figures that were still missing from my collection. One of the ones that I've detailed before was Yak Face. Now, Yak Face I got from Falcon's Hanger, Hanger, Jeff Freeman in Indiana. And I've told several stories about Jeff. David West Reynolds wrote some Star Wars books, and he and I were corresponding at the time. I actually was corresponding with him before he started writing Star Wars books and magazine articles and everything. He actually contacted me after I'd written an article on customizing Star Wars figures, and he had written an article on customizing Star Wars figures, and he just sought me out and said, I figure we're the only two doing this, we need to talk shop. So he commented once that he had urged Jeff to change the spelling of the name of the mail order store several times, but Jeff never had. David West Reynolds would sell some of his custom-made stuff. He did a Bantha and a Mos Eisley playset and things. I wish I'd bought those. In hindsight, you know, at the time I wasn't collecting boutique items like that. In hindsight, I wish I'd bought those instead of concentrating on things that, you know, were mass-produced. But I told the story about Yak Face and ordering via money order through the mail. You didn't know what you were getting. It was a typed list. It was text only. There were no photos. You sent the money order hoping they hadn't sold the item yet. I mean, what if the guy was unscrupulous? What if he cashed the money order and just kept the money and said, sorry, it's already been sold, or acted like he never got the letter in the mail? So yeah, we didn't have the protection of PayPal and all those things back in the day when we were doing mail order. So I got lucky. I did get a Yak Face, but when it arrived, it had no weapon. The late John Davis kindly took care of that issue. I walked into Wizards Comics one day after ordering the figure, but before the figure had arrived, and he goes, hey, I was going through some stuff and I found this, just in case you need it. Yeah, I needed it. I needed it for my Yak Face that arrived a few days later. So thank you again. Another great John Davis gift that I received over the years. Two other figures that I ordered were the droids incarnations of R2 and 3PO. Now, you may notice one is on an American card and one is on a Canadian card. I didn't care. But because I spent so much money on the two of these, roughly 30 bucks each, I think Yak Face was in the $30 range as well in 1992. If he was more than that, he wouldn't have been over 60, but I think I paid 30 for him. I paid 30 each for R2 and 3PO, and somewhere there is a VHS tape. The only reason I haven't sought it out yet is because, number one, I don't think I have a way to convert VHS to digital at the moment, and number two, my first wife is featured heavily in the background of the unboxing. But as I took them out, I guess I must have looked at R2 first, and I was like, oh, cool. And then as I held up the 3PO from the Droids collection, I said, that's the last one. And my voice kind of broke on last. It was not the last Star Wars figure I would ever buy, far from it. But that was the sense of completing the collection that I had when I opened those. There were other figures that I got from Jeff Freeman that were not Star Wars, however. As you can tell by the apparel that I am wearing for this video, it was Ghostbusters related. And frankly, had I not read his listing, I would not have known these had ever been made. This was my first inkling that there was something called the Ecto-Glow Real Ghostbusters figures. I've covered this in a previous video. And once again, these guys only cost me 30 bucks each. So here's Louis Tully. We'll come back to him. Winston Zeddemore. Egon Spengler. Ray Stantz. And the character that I identified the most strongly with, Peter Venkman. And as with R2 and 3PO, I paid 30 bucks each for these. I couldn't bring myself to cut them off the card. Here it is. That was 1992, the summer of 1992 when I bought these. It is now 2025, and they are still on the card. I have never physically touched one of those figures. So a little while ago, they started bringing out the retro collection of Real Ghostbusters figures. Hasbro remolded these guys. So you had a brand new mold for Winston Zeddemore, a brand new mold for Egon Spengler, a brand new mold for Ray Stantz, and a brand new mold for Peter Venkman. And I remember thinking, if they were smart, what they would do is they would take these molds that they've made and they would do the Spectral Ghostbusters from Citizen Ghost, which had never been made as action figures. Now, I myself customized them many years ago, but Hasbro, Kenner, never made them back in the day, and Hasbro has never made them currently. But being a customizer from way back, I simply took some extra figures that John Givens was getting rid of for cheap, and I painted them. I hand mixed acrylic paints for the very first time. And some of them were the regular first series of figures, like Egon and Winston. So they've got their shoulder patch. Even Ray. But Peter was from a later line, and he lacked the shoulder patch, so I just put a big old plop of marshmallow there, as if it was obscuring it. So that was a fun experiment. I gave them this sort of metallic green skin since they glow in the episode. But still, I really think Hasbro should take these molds that they've already retooled and offer something they've never offered before. The Spectral Ghostbusters. It's a no-brainer. Then I had conversations with people like Brandon Ballantyne, who said, I wish they would take those molds and they would remake the Ecto-Glow. Now, Brandon owns a set of the Ecto-Glow Ghostbusters. His are loose. So he wanted Hasbro to make them so he could have a carded set. And as soon as he said that, I was like, wow, it would be super neat to have a set that I could open and actually touch and pose and put them in photos. Huh, yeah, maybe Hasbro will do that. Maybe they'll reissue the Ecto-Glow figures at some point. Then some of these little guys started showing up. This guy is a match to Peter's glowing ghost. And this guy is a match to Winston's glowing ghost. Unpainted, but still. Why would these be being produced now? That was my first inkling. And not terribly long after I got those from a generous donation. Also, I don't know if I covered it in the previous video, but when he sent me those, he included this little button, which had actually belonged to an employee at Hasbro. So that was kind of cool. Not terribly long after those started showing up, they broke the news that they were going to make Ecto-Glow figures. But they were going to make them as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. Okay. I really started stressing out about this because I didn't want to miss the boat on them after waiting since 1992 for a second chance to get some for a decent low price. I saw them show up on eBay while San Diego Comic-Con was still going on. There was still no word whether or not they would be released on Hasbro Pulse. I waited. I waited. I waited. And in our conversations among the Florence Ghostbusters, I even said, you know what? It would be kind of cool to go ahead and buy them, because at the time, the markup was only about $50 more than what the people had paid at the con. And I thought, I can't drive to San Diego. I can't fly to San Diego. I can't get admission to San Diego Comic-Con for under 50 bucks. This is a legitimately decent price for them to be asking. And still I waited. And still I waited. And they put them up on Hasbro Pulse for the exact same price it would have cost you at the con. And I had a set. And they are in this box right here. But first, let's cover something else. Here is my custom Ecto-Glow Janine by Toyaholic. I have actually touched this one because of the ingenious packaging, where you can reach in there and touch the figure. How cool is that? I've shown that in a previous video, but I've never taken her off of her twist ties. I'm still hoping at that point that they would bring out some Ecto-Glow repros. I also bought this guy from Toyaholic. I mean, it's a Ghostbusters slash Star Wars mashup. How could I not try to buy that? Oh, the little mask for Luke is rotated in there. But I don't know. I kind of had buyer's remorse as soon as I took it out of the package. So I don't know. May stay with me. It may go to a new home.
Toyaholic has since made an Ecto-Glow Batman, but that one sold out before I even knew about it.
And now for the main event. There's a pretty neat piece of packaging they did for these, I thought. Very much in the vintage style. There's also a glowing Ectomobile. So it's an Ecto-Glow, Ecto-Glow. I don't know when to stop. That has not arrived yet. I have that on pre-order. And then they are supposed to do a Louis Tully at some point. Possibly the Ecto-Glow Copter will be done, and they're going to do Ecto-Glow versions of Slimer and Stay Puft. Where and when all those things will become available, I do not know. We've got the lovely camouflage netting. This would make like a good, I mean, it would be a neat light effect for like a G.I. Joe diorama. You can't really see it on the table like I'm describing, but that's not what you care about. Let's talk about these guys. The Ecto-Glow Heroes Collector Set, ages 4 and up. This room protected by the real Ghostbusters. That is such a vintage touch right there. Egon, Ray, Winston, and Peter. And I'm going to cut the tape here on the bottom. And we'll get these guys out of here. When they first announced that they were only doing 4 figures for Comic-Con, I was like, yep, that Louis Tully figure, his price is fixing to skyrocket. Everybody's going to want him now. So maybe I should buy a second one on eBay. I can buy a loose one. I won't have to buy a carded one. Thankfully, I did not do that because they have announced that they're going to do a Louis in the future. But Peter, let's compare him to the vintage figure. I'd say that's remarkably similar. So the backs of the cards are where you will know the real from the reproductions. So keep these guys over here with Louis. Stay. Egon and Egon. Ray's hair's a little dark, but I'd say it's actually an improvement. Stop, Louis. Stop. Louis Tully, I was trying to get in the shot. Can you see how? Can you see the darker of the hair there? That is really cool. And Winston. So now I have 2 carded sets. And eventually I will have a set of these open. I'm not going to do it right here on camera right now. The video's long enough as it is. But there is Lewis, and I've got 4 of each of the rest of them. So, and I've got the custom Janine. So, you look fantastic in this. But this was something I've waited for a long, long time. In the end, I got these guys for $10 less each than what I paid for these guys. So I'm not going to feel bad about opening these at all. Thank you for watching.